At the end of the last video in this series, we chopped a bunch of bark and cooked it in a pot. Now this is the first cook. This is the liquid drained off the first cooking. You can see it's very dense, very rich. And that's, the most concentrated cook. And then this cook right here is the second cook. But as you can see, there's still a lot of color in there. So we definitely don't want to waste that. And you can even do a third cook. I'm not going to do a third cook today, but you can to get as much as possible out. So just a quick recap before we get going here. So far the hide's been soaked in lime, then it was dehaired, fleshed. The hide was rinsed and scraped about 5 or 6 times, so alternately rinsed and scraped to get clean out the internal fiber, like clean out the inside of the skin basically, and get all the lime out. Then we soaked it overnight in a fermented bran solution of wheat bran and water, and now we're ready to start tanning. It's ready to go. We're going to start in this solution. Now this is the second cook, so it's pretty weak, and it's generally better to start in a weakish solution, if anything, but it's another place that I don't measure stuff because I just don't think it matters that much. I just haven't found that it matters that much what you put it in to start with, but I usually still start with a weak solution and then kind of bump it up as the tanning progresses. So the way that it works if you're tanning in just a liquid like this is that I'll start in a weak solution and then I have this concentrate, the first cook, I have that to strengthen the solution. So I'll just, dump a little bit of that in every once in a while, and then if I start running out, I just cook another batch. So probably today or tomorrow, I'll cut about this much bark again. I think we had this just about half or a little over half full, and I think that'll be enough to finish it. I think with this hide, I'm going to end up layering it, but we'll see. I'm not sure yet. And layering is where you take shredded bark and you put it in between layers of hide. So in this case, I'll take the hide and I'll kind of fold it into a tub with layers of bark between every fold. So there's no place, ideally, where the skin is folded on itself. It's always got bark in between it. And then you just add some liquor to that, or even water sometimes, or even maybe the partly used liquor. And then you just let it sit for a while and very slowly absorb tannin. And that'll make usually a really thorough tan, like a really dense leather that has just soaked up as much tannin as possible. Like if you just tan a hide until the tannin just reaches all the way through the hide and then take it out, it's not really tanned as thoroughly as it could be. So by doing something like that, or you can also just keep it in a really strong liquor for longer, it'll become basically more tanned. It becomes more of a compound material of hide fiber and tannin, because leather is neither tannin or hide. It's its own thing. Once those two combine, it changes completely. Like the skin fiber will no longer rot, and it's just an entirely different material. So let's get started. I'm just going to go ahead and rinse this used bark with water before I strain it back in, just to get any little bit of tannin that's left, instead of just putting the hose water straight in. Now I'd prefer not to dilute this any, but there's just not enough liquid in there for this hide. So, that's a problem. Alright, we're done with that. These chips can be used in compost or charred for biochar. Alright, since I added some water and I still want more liquid in here, I'm just going to go ahead and dump in some of this concentrate right now. And, there's no reason for this to be as weak as it is. But it's important to have enough liquid, or the hide will just be kind of like, you want the hide kind of floating around in liquid. It can't just be watered up in a very small amount of liquid. That just doesn't work. So this is the only strength test I do, is just picking it up and looking at it to see how dense the liquid is. Now obviously that's going to change anytime you use a different tanning material. But again, I just don't find that it matters that much how strong it is when you start it. If I was running a tannery, like a regular tannery, and doing the same thing over and over, I'm sure I'd come up with recipes and measurements, but I prefer not to because it just makes me better at being really adaptable and not requiring any apparatus or thinking about it too much, you know. Now let's take a look at our hide here. It's really nice. It's nice. It's just nice and clean. It's just completely different than when we started. Remember that salty, nasty, smelly, ugly thing we started with? Well, this is completely different. And it's nice and relaxed now. You can see, look how fluidly it moves. Yeah, all that rubberiness from the lime is gone. It's very relaxed. And, you know, between all the rinsing, the scraping, and the drenching, and I find that the scraping is pretty important. You know, maybe if you have running water all the time, like you can just put it into running water or a tumbler like a washing machine, but for a long time. You could skip the scudding step, but I find the scudding essential for tanning by hand to really get the hide back into this really relaxed state. And it's not just that, it's like when you're doing it, you can just see how much stuff you're pushing out all the time. So anyway, it's ready to go, and I'm just going to drain it for a second on the beam, and then we'll put it in. This is after 5 minutes. I can already feel, it already is feeling like leather. I mean, it's just getting started as far as penetrating. We want this tannin has to do this all the way through the entire skin thoroughly. But as you can see, it's already well underway. Well, what we really don't want to do is just dump this in here and leave it, because all the wrinkles and folds won't get tannin. It's really the exposure to the liquor that does the tanning. So we need to keep this moving for especially today, and then, you know, tomorrow, and we'll be strengthening the solution a lot and just kind of revisiting it frequently. It's been well over an hour now, and I got distracted editing videos, and I was chopping some more bark. So let's take a look. You see these white spots, and they're exactly symmetrical. See, there's a little spot here, like a small spot here, small spot here, big spot here, big spot here. They're all matching. That's because the hide was folded like this. Now that's what I'm talking about. That's what we can't have. So that's why you need to come out and stir it frequently. And it's more important in the beginning, like this. So that's not a big deal. Those are going to even out. But don't, you know, don't just leave it. Ideally, I would be stirring it every half hour or so all day today. And then maybe later every hour, and then, you know, several times tomorrow. And of course, I'm going to look at my liquor again, like I said, kind of just check it out for how strong it is. It definitely looks a little bit weaker already, which is no surprise looking at all the color that's in the hide. So that came from somewhere. It came from this liquor. So it's using it up fast. All right, it's the next morning, and let's see how we're doing here. looks good. The color looks pretty even. There's a little inconsistency, but it looks all right. As you can see, it's colored up quite a bit. That's the grain side. Here's the flesh side. Now the other thing we want to look at is the color of the liquid and how dense it is. Every time you check the hides, check the liquor and see how it looks kind of weak now. I mean, there's not a lot of color to it. You can see my hand through it really easily. So what I'll do is I'll just pick it up with my hand or put my hand right below the surface and just look at it. So this is a lot weaker than it was when we started, much, much weaker. There's actually very little tanning power left in this liquor already. And that's one thing I really want to drive home in this video, is the fact that the tannin gets used up very quickly, and you can't just leave the hide in here, because by the end of today this will be hardly doing anything at all. It already is probably doing very little. So let's compare that. Here's a handful of fresh liquor, of concentrated liquor from the first cooking. You can see there's quite a difference there in strength. This is like a deep rich red color, and this is kind of a washed out orange color. So I would add more concentrate now to bump up the strength of this from that first cook, but instead I'm going to leave this for the rest of the day, and we'll see what it looks like by the end of today. So it's actually a couple of days later. I wanted to leave this for a while and let it get really weak so you can see what it looks like, and you can see already how weak it is and how you can kind of see through the liquid and see the hide underneath here. Look how weak that is now. This is just, there's really nothing left in here. Now it's really important to know, a lot of people don't know this, they just think that if there's color, there's tannin. Well, that's not true. There's really, the color and the tannin aren't necessarily totally synonymous. So this liquor is basically totally ineffective. It's going to start growing bacteria. In fact, I can see like a little slime growing on here already. You know, eventually it's going to affect the quality of the hide, and it's just not doing anything, you know? It's just not doing anything. Okay, we got a couple options from here. One is that we can just add concentrate to this weakened liquor, and I've got, you know, a bunch of concentrate here left. This is almost half full, and it's quite strong. So that's an option. And eventually it'll get to a point though where I just keep adding concentrate, and then the hide takes all the tannin out of the solution and I add more, and it just builds up to a huge amount of liquid. So what you can do with that is just let it get weak like it is right now. Like if I was adding concentrate now, I'd probably dump some of this weak liquor out and then add concentrate. I have another batch of bark ready, so I could start cooking that now, and then I would have that, you know, that nice strong solution to strengthen this and just tan it that way. And that would be pretty fast, especially if we manipulate it a lot. So another thing is, right now normally I would take this and put it on the beam and scrape over the flesh side just to open the hide back out. Tannin tends to shrink and contract the hide, and so then the fibers are like shrunken down, and the liquid doesn't move as well through the hide, so it will tan slower. So if you want to speed it up, the more that you can like put it on the beam, scrape the flesh side, stretch it around, move it in any way, will help speed the tanning process. But it's not going to gain you anything in quality. It's not going to make a better leather or anything. It's just going to make it go faster. So at the Buckeye Primitive Skills Gathering, I've taught a couple of times, I've taught bark tanning, and we're able to get goat hides through the process in like 5 days because, well, I have them already limed, so that's done, but they do everything else. But I have them come back several times a day, put the hides on the beam, scrape over the flesh side just to scud out the old liquid and open it up, and then put it back in new fresh solution. We add, you know, we add concentrated solution every day, and I also have them just come by and kind of sit around and stretch on the skins in the liquid, and it gets it done really fast. But this hide doesn't really need that. It just feels really floppy and loose still. I mean, it hasn't tanned that much because we really haven't put that much tannin in here. We started with a pretty weak solution and really haven't added anything. So it feels fine to me, so I'm not going to do that process. But normally just keep an eye on it. If it seems really kind of shrunk down, then it's a good idea to put it on the beam at least once and open it up. It also will get more of the whatever's left on the flesh side of little bits of tissue will come off really easy. But I'm actually going to layer this hide, so it's going to be like bark in the bottom, put the hide in, and start folding the hide in there neatly, but with layers of bark between all of the folds, and then we'll pour liquor over that and just let it sit for like 4 to 8 weeks. And I have a feeling that will make a little bit firmer, more substantial leather, which is what we want, because this does feel kind of spongy and just soft, and probably like it's not going to make, I mean, you can't just make leather into something it doesn't want to be. Like after it's gone through all the processes before we put it in here, and just the nature of any particular hide and any different like species are all different, that's going to affect how the leather comes out no matter what we do from this point on. But that's one thing we can do that I think may make a difference. I'm not sure, but we'll see. And again, if this doesn't turn out the way we want it, we'll just tan another hide, or we'll just use some leather that I have in my stash from years of doing this. So yeah, that's what we're going to do. Remember, if you want to do layering, that you need, a strong enough material and you need enough of it. And, every area is different. You're going to have different materials than I do. I would say if you have any kind of oak bark, that's probably going to be fine for layering, and other barks that are typically used for tanning, like hemlock or something like that, are going to work if you just use enough of it. So I like to tan the hide a little bit like this before I put it in the layer. And I've read other accounts, like traditionally it was often done with just fresh prepared hides, so they wouldn't pre-tan them at all like this, and they would just be done like cattle hides, that are not really thick and dense, would be done in several layers. So they would do one layer, prepare it, fill it with liquor, put weights on it, and just leave it for say like 2 to 3 months, and then they would pull that out, relayer it with new bark, and leave that for 3 months or whatever, and then pull it out and do that again 3 to 4 times depending on the thickness of the hide. And that's rarely done these days. If you looked all over the world, you're going to find very few examples of people who go to that kind of length and trouble, because we're talking up to a year, to do pit tanned leather, and even longer for doing really, really densely well tanned leathers like sole leather for shoe soles. So it's very uncommon these days for anyone to be doing that, because it's such an investment, and you don't even get any returns for an entire year. You can see why people don't do it, and why tanneries went to like faster methods. But you'll still find people, even though hardly anyone's ever used pit tanned leather, really, because no one makes it. Like if you don't make it yourself, I'm not sure where you get it. There must be someone still producing it, but barely. But there's still people who will argue that pit tanned leather is superior to leather tanned in solutions more like this, and by modern methods that kind of speed the process up and get the hides out of the tannery and onto the market quicker. Okay, so we're going to layer this up. Let's do that. So first I'm just going to take the hide out, save the old liquor aside so I can use it to cap this back off when it's ready. I'm going to go for about 1 inch on the bottom. That's a lot of nice bark there. This is going to be a little challenging, because this is a good sized hide. And I have to, again, make sure that there's no major folds that don't have bark stuffed in between them. So it's just going to be a lot of fooling around. I hope I don't run out of bark, because I don't really want to cut more right now. Okay, well that looks like a pretty tidy package. So now I can lay this over like that, but remember that this now has no bark, so I have to stuff that full of bark. Make sure it's all the way in there. I'm probably putting about an inch average. I think that's plenty with this bark, you know, but this bark is also, this is very high quality, rich bark. I mean, there are definitely barks with higher tannin in other barks and other materials, but well, damn, I am going to run out of bark. We're close though, close to done. Okay, so no problem. I can chip that much in about 20 minutes, probably. Let's see, did we put any here? Oh no, that's still empty, all in here. Plenty of bark in there. Before we bury this, let's cut off a piece of this neck and see how well penetrated it is. We'll look at that in a minute. Okay, I'm convinced that there's enough bark in there, especially with the liquor we're going to add. So I'm actually going to add now a cap of this used boiled bark from the first batch that we cooked up, just to cap the whole thing off and make sure the hide stays submerged completely. That's really important. So, you know, this isn't going to subtract anything. It's just not going to add anything. But see, now we have this nice packed, buried thing going on here. And we're going to dump in the used liquor. And all of this strong liquor is going in. That's a lot. Look at all that. Oh yeah, good stuff. Now there's definitely some air pockets in there. I've never had a problem with that, but I'm going to spend some time jiggling this around, even just like this, to make sure that liquor is moving in through all the folds in the hide. So I think that's it. You know, I can just put a lid on this and literally forget about it for a couple of months. I might, you know, I'm inclined to let it go for a while, but I can always get in here. I know the neck is right here, and it's the thickest part. See, like that. That's what, 5/16 of an inch or something. So I can get in there and check that, and if that's penetrated all the way through, then I know it's, you know, the whole thing is going to be done. The one thing I'll probably do is I'll let this sit for a while and just kind of let the liquid in there seep through and get in everywhere, and then jiggle it some more to try to dislodge any more air. But other than that, we're done. My only other caution would be don't let it freeze super hard if you live in a very cold climate where this could, you know, really freeze and ice up badly. You know, the thing's not going to freeze solid here. That would be very unusual, but it could freeze some, so I may bring it in or insulate it somehow, or just dig a hole and set it down into the hole part way to keep it from freezing. But I think we're good to go, so we'll revisit this project when that's ready. We're going to take a close look at this piece I cut off of the neck, and then I think I might talk for just a few minutes about tanning history and the whole thing of like modern methods replacing older methods. All right, take a gander at that. So this is what it looks like as the hide is penetrated with the tannic acid. But like I said, just because it goes all the way through and eventually meets in the middle there so that there's no white line in the middle, that doesn't mean it's tanned as well as it could be. It just means that it's, you know, at least tanned through. So hopefully if we leave this hide for a while, you know, just sitting there fermenting and soaking in that bark, it's going to take up a maximum amount of tannin, just really a lot of tannin, and make a really good, well-tanned leather. What's he going on about? Who knows, some kind of blue jay drama. So I just want to tie up this video with a little chat about like this kind of conflict between traditional tanning and modern tanning that happened. And also, you know, it's just, this isn't a phenomenon that is exclusive to tanning. There's always this kind of certain element of conservatism around how things are done in traditional processes, and the quality or qualities of, you know, new versus old goods made by, you know, new or old processes. So an interesting story related to that whole idea and that whole conflict is that my friend Ray Hardin, who is from a ranching family in Central California, and if he's still alive, he's well over 100 now, but he told me this story that his grandfather was a file maker. And the way files used to be made back then is that you'd get your blank ready, like you'd shape the file the shape you want it, and then you would make it very soft, dead soft, by heating it and cooling it slowly. Put it on a little lead plate platform for stability, strap it down, and then you take a chisel and just cut like that, one tooth at a time. And he believed in his craft and the quality of his files, even though machine-made files started to become widely available, and they were a lot cheaper, I'm sure. I remember what Ray said is that his grandfather died a poor man because he just like stuck steadfastly to his hand-cut file craft, and, you know, of course couldn't make any money doing that, competing with machine-made files. Well, it turns out he was right. So early on, people started to complain that these machine-made files didn't work as well. And it turns out it was because the inconsistency of a hand-cut file is actually beneficial in filing. So at least according to everything I've read, I've never used a hand-cut file because I couldn't afford one, if anyone still makes them. People definitely make hand-stitched rasps still that are, you know, cut one tooth at a time. Files, I'm not so sure whether anyone does or not. Anyway, they're not widely available, and I'm sure they're very expensive. So that was like a similar conflict. And with tanning, what happened is tanning used to be a craft and a vocation that was passed down. And back then, a lot of things were secretive. People didn't share their trade secrets. They kept them secret. So if you were an apprentice, you know, you might be sworn to secrecy about the methods that were used wherever you worked, in whatever craft you worked in. And so the tanneries kind of had just learned, you know, over the years by trial and error and passing down methods. So a certain tannery would just stick with the same process, I'm sure, for literally hundreds of years with very little change. And when science started to bloom in the 19th century, sciencey people started getting interested in tanning and in improving tanning. So for them, it was like everything should be looked at logically, assessed, and then we could improve everything basically with science. So there was this conflict between the traditional tanners and the modern tanners, and a lot of the early writings in tanning are actually by these sciencey type people who are basically arguing for quicker, less wasteful methods that make as good or superior leather. And that wasn't always agreed, with by the traditional tanners. You start to see things like new extraction methods, like they would consider pit tanning wasteful. I've definitely seen that argument from the science guys saying that, look, you're making these big pits, you chop all these tons and tons of oak bark, and then you layer it up, and you set it and leave it, and then drain it and change it 3 times, and we could tan those same hides with a lot less bark by doing a really thorough extraction through like this multi-tank system, at certain temperatures to extract all of the tannin, and then tan the hides way quicker because they're laying these away in the pit for 9 to 12 months, sometimes more. And they're saying, yeah, look, we can make this faster and more efficient. And in some cases, they would argue that the quality would be even better than what people were doing. And traditional tanners and also, I think, consumers were, somewhat skeptical. And the truth is, we don't really, I don't know how to know the answer to that question aside from like spending half a lifetime really tanning a lot in all different methods and comparing. I mean, this is like a full-time undertaking just to do that and really try to understand that problem, because I think that the two sides of that argument are kind of politically driven, and in politics where you get people taking sides and one side adopts this and this set of views like independent just as a package, and then this side adopts these other views, and then they kind of butt heads, but no one's like really trying to solve a problem and look at all the space in between where the true answers may very well be. I just wanted to say that because, I mentioned pit tanning and the quality of pit tanned leather. Is it better? I have no idea. I haven't got a clue. I mean, go find some really traditional pit tanned leather to even look at and try to use. It's very, very uncommon, if it exists at all, in the way that it used to be done. When you read some of the processes they went through in these old books in order to make the quality of leather that they, what they thought was quality leather, it's really pretty remarkable. And I think we can say for sure, though, that mostly what that attitude, like that whole, science is going to solve all these problems and make this a more efficient, more profitable. That was often, what they talked about a lot, because they were trying to appeal to the tanners and say, look, you can make more money if you do this. You're going to make a lot more money because it's going to take a quarter the amount of time or a third amount of time, and less materials basically. And so that's just better for you. So where was I with that? Where was I? Oh yeah, I know where I was going with that. Well, I think we can say for sure that what that paradigm, the modern tanning paradigm, really yielded us was a lot of crappy leather. I mean, now factories just crank out really crappy leather, mostly. I mean, they produce some good leather too, but compared to what used to be produced as just average leather, I think that the vast majority of leather now is crap, because it's like anything. When you start looking toward everything as just more profit oriented, can you hear the hail? Or it's kind of like a snow slash hail, snail, something like that. So when you start to get into that mentality, it's like, I notice this in myself. If I start using a power tool like a grinder or something to get something done quicker, I start to lose my patience and just want to get everything done faster, and that becomes my new thing. Like I'm focused on that instead of on slowing down and making the thing as well as I can or the way that I want it. And I think there's just a mentality when you start thinking of everything as profit and time is money, and how fast can you get this done, how efficiently and how profitably, especially, you can get this done, then that just pushes us in that direction of making, cutting corners more and more and making crappier and crappier product. So, it's a curse and a blessing. Yeah, leather's cheaper now. It's probably a more profitable business, I guess, for somebody. We did end up with a lot of crappy leather, and kind of that, it's just that kind of throwaway mentality where instead of taking the materials you have available and trying to make the best thing out of it, you're trying to take the material available, make the quickest thing out of it that you can still get people to buy. Like, as long as they'll keep buying it, that's justification for making it, basically. And I'm not a big fan of that kind of attitude, obviously. And I think that we need kind of a leather renaissance, I guess. And I just feel like it's possible for more traditional methods combined with modern methods, could be, somewhat profitable for people that maybe are just want to do something that is meaningful to them and make a living, but not have to maximize profit all the time and always be pushing that profit ceiling. So yeah, I just wanted to say that as a tie-up to this video, and we'll revisit these hides whenever they're done, and I don't know what we'll do in between. Maybe get some more wood for the strop blanks and make some glue. I'm not sure. Okay.